enthused and enthralled and involved.
Hello.
Hello.
If somebody doesn't sound as enthused and enthralled, it's because this is the second time we're doing this. Because we were trying something out with our, muting our mics, and at some point, I forgot to hit record. So we've been sitting here talking for probably close to an hour, if not more.
We were at the end of the episode. I had literally already read the nonprofit.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, how long has this episode been going? And she goes, it hasn't. I'm like, what?
So, we're definitely recording this time. I'm seeing the times going. We're good. It says recording. We're good.
So I'm just, kicked back.
So,
Brittany's voice is going to go.
I might lose it by the end of this episode. We still got one more to do after this.
And I'm really excited about that
I'm really excited about that episode. So, this week we're doing Unsolved again. I keep a laundry list in my pocket for.
I literally told
episodes.
her what within the past couple weeks.
I
thought we had done more than one episode of this, and I was like, if we never do another one of these, I'd be okay with it.
I'm pretty sure this is number 2. I'll go back and look.
I get confused with the missing persons and the unsolved.
Now the missing persons, I know I've got more, but I want to hold off on doing another one of those for a while because I don't want to
I don't want our shit to become
together.
I don't want our shit to become a Debbie Downer.
Right.
People come here for a relief. Comedic relief, and I'm here for the comedic relief.
Thank you.
Because I'm freaking funny.
We're gonna need it for my Unsolved Mysteries. I'm not Robert Stack. And I'm not wearing a cloak.
Who?
Robert Stack. Unsolved Mysteries?
Oh.
Yeah, because I'll tell you later, because that might... Anyway.
I'm just
a girl who started reading ACOTAR.
I don't know what that is, but okay.
A Court of Thorn and Roses. It's... The first one's... I really like the first one. It's kind of got a little smut in it. The first one...
I'm here for some smut.
The first one didn't have a whole lot. It wasn't super descriptive. Ow. But I guess because people liked the first book so much, the author was like, you know what? Let me describe it a little bit more in book 2. So, on chapter 2, we had to wait a minute for the first one in the last book.
I've come across a book that is like a lesbian vampire smut book, and I saw it on TikTok, and I'm going to have to look it up. I think I'm here for it.
If you hear me yawn,
It's 11:42.
I hope you yawn too.
I literally had just thought to myself, man, I might get home before 2 o'clock in the morning.
You mean a speed read?
No, just take your time.
All right. So I'm going to start off with Paradise Ridge Axe Murders. And this one, as I said in the recording that you will never hear because it wasn't recorded. This one was suggested by Daniel's stepmom. She messaged me an article and was like, this would be good for the podcast. So I saved it and now we're here. If you were local to us, you may know this one, but if you're not, or even if you are and you just don't know or never heard of it, tuck in and let's get into it. It is 1897 in northwest Davidson County, close by the Cheatham County line. Clarksville Pike doesn't exist yet, but instead you can go up a ridge from what is now called White's Creek. There are 3 ways you can go. You can either take the long way and go Eaton's Creek Road, take White's Creek Pike around the hairpin turn called the Devil's Elbow, or you can take one of the old roads from Dry Fork up Germantown Hill to Morney, which was also, Germantown was called that because due to the large number of German families to settle there, but it is now all just called Jolton. Jacob and Pauline Ade lived on Paradise Ridge along Clarksville Road for over 20 years. They were well liked in their community and were pretty well off. Jacob was well known for his generosity and was willing to lend his neighbors money. The Aids had 410 acres of farmland and a 5-bedroom house. The Aids had 6 children, including Emma, Rosa, Anna, Henry, Lizzie, and Dora. Emma, Rosa, and Anna were grown and had moved out of the house, and Dora, who was 10, was living with Rosa and her husband in Nashville. Lizzie was 20, and it isn't clear how old Henry was at this time, but he was older than Dora, but younger than Lizzie. On this particular day, the Aids had a neighbor girl staying over, and her name was Rosa. On the night of Tuesday, March 23rd, 1897, according to the Nashville American, at approximately 9:30 p.m., Squire Simpson's mother, who was a neighbor of the Aids, woke him up and told him to go check to see what was on fire. When Simpson arrived at the Aids' property, he saw that the house was on fire. He presumed that the family was gone, and he began to try to save the meat from the smokehouse. Shortly thereafter, one of the walls of the home collapsed, and Simpson was able to see into the rooms. He saw 2 bundles of clothing in the middle of it could have been the sitting room, I don't know. And it became obvious to him that these bundles were people. Using a fork that was used for digging potatoes, Simpson was able to get 4 bodies out of the burning building. Afterward, he went to get another neighbor, S.A. Thompson, and they went to tell Rosa's father, Henry Moyer, about what had just occurred. All 3 men stayed until Sheriff Sharp was able to arrive. At this time, a 5th body, that of Rosa, was discovered. It had been in the same room as the other 4. The neighbors who knew the Aids quite well began to say that it had to be foul play, because the room in which all 5 bodies were found was that of Mr. and Mrs. Aid, and none of the children would have been in there. But that's kind of between the different sources and articles. I don't know if they were in the sitting room or if they were in the parents' bedroom. Rosa Moyer was able to be identified because her head was intact. The other 4 did not have their heads. The sheriff and neighbors theorized that a murderer knocked on the door, and when it was opened, presumably by Jacob, the murderer hit him with an axe. He surmised that Pauline then moved toward the door at either the same time as her husband or to come to his aid, but was also struck down. He speculated that the murderer then came into the room to take out the children, and Rosa was able to run behind him and get out of the house. After the Aids were dead and the murderer had recovered the home in coal oil and set it on fire, it was believed that he recaptured Rosa, hacked her to death, and threw her body back into the burning home. The family was known to keep a 5-gallon can of coal oil in the home, and it was missing. The following descriptions came from the March 25th, 1897 issue of the Tennessean, and may be disturbing to some listeners, so please proceed with that fact in mind. The bodies were taken from the ruins headless, with the exception of the Moyer child. Her face still bore a slight resemblance to humanity, and one little hand was raised to her head, as if to ward off a blow. The back portion of her head was gone, but whether it burned away or was crushed by some ruthless hand may never be decided. When found, the body of the Moyer child was laying on its back. From the shapeless condition of the other remains, it was impossible to tell in which position they were when they met death. Pieces of the skulls of the victims were picked up in the ruins yesterday. The largest piece was about the size of a man's hand. Other smaller pieces of skull were picked up, filling a quart bucket. From these indications, it would seem that the older members of the family were decapitated with an axe or similar weapon, while the Moyer child was brained with the same instrument. Some thought that there had to have been 2 murderers, because if there was only one, who took the time to cut off everyone's heads before setting the fire? This act alone would have given Rosa enough time to run back toward her home. Initially, the sheriff thought that the motive for the murders could have been theft, but a can of money was found inside the home. The sheriff then pointed the finger at a neighbor named Ed Anderson, who had been arrested on the Saturday prior to the murders for stealing some of Ade's pigs, but there were no witnesses that had ever seen the two men have an exchange of negative words. According to the Tennessean, about 7 o'clock yesterday morning, while a number of the neighbors were standing about gazing at the scene of desolation and discussing the tragedy, a man clad in a gray suit of clothes was seen dodging in and out of the bushes about 200 yards from the house. He disappeared and was not seen anymore. Anderson did not show up to the aides until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on March 24th, and it was noticed that his clothes and general description matched that of the suspicious man seen earlier that morning. A gruesome spectacle. Scarcely a piece of charred timber remains of the Ade residence and the smokehouse. The only traces are baked earth, ashes, and 3 substantial chimneys. Even the covering of a cistern was burned to the ground. The Holocaust was a gruesome spectacle yesterday. Many people looked at it and turned away. It was horrible, and the horror was accentuated by the odor of burnt flesh which hung about the premises. In one corner of the yard, upon a plank elevated by 2 barrels, there were the remains of 5 human victims. A sheet was over them, and few cared to lift it. The piece of canvas concealed charred lumps of flesh from which the broken bones protruded. Only one of the ladies was recognizable, that of the little Moyer girl. Her head was still upon her shoulders, and her features were distinguishable though burnt black. One little arm was raised beside the head, but there was no hand on it. The other ladies were hardly recognizable as those of human beings. Other bodies, not ladies. Neighbors are aroused. The 6th victim of the crime was the black and tan dog. Its body was also burnt to a crisp and was found in the fireplace of the lumber room, where it had evidently retreated to escape the flames. The dog's body looked like a charred piece of wood. The only witness to this crime was the aide's old, mostly blind and deaf German shepherd who had been outside when the fire was started. Found hidden in the yard and wounded. Only living eyewitness besides the perpetrators. Only a dog was spared. He was very old and of the shepherd breed. His teeth are gone and his days of service are no doubt over. Justice Simpson found him lying behind a brick oven in the southwest corner of the yard soon after coming upon the scene. The dog was very quiet until discovered, but when the justice found him, he came out. He then rubbed against the man's leg as if soliciting a friendly pat, and when it was not given, he howled. Justice Simpson paid little attention to him at the time, but yesterday morning it was discovered by some of the many who congregated in the yard that the brute was wounded. There was a small contusion by his right eye, such as would be made by a blow from a stick. And this mark of violence strongly substantiates the belief that the foulest crime ever perpetrated in Davidson County was committed Tuesday night, and to which the dog is the only living witness against the man or men who did it. Yesterday morning, the animal lay stretched out in the rear of what was once the home of his master. Unmistakable evidence of sorrow were noticeable on his face. He was utterly indifferent to his surroundings. Occasionally, someone would give him a friendly pat, but he paid no attention to it. Although this dog has no power of reason and is old and decrepit, it may be that a clue is to be established through his recollection of the party who wounded him. If he could prove an agent of the law in this manner, that service would be the most signal one of his career. This dog became the sheriff's secret witness. He thought that somehow the dog would be able to identify the killers. The first arrests made were some black men in Ashland City who confessed that they killed the aides in order to rob them. but with the lack of evidence for robbery, they were eventually let go. Anderson was also a good suspect, but there was never any substantial evidence against him. It was also speculated that Rosa's father, Henry, had a partner and they killed the aides for reasons unknown, and when his daughter recognized him, he had to kill her as well. This theory was not backed by any evidence and made the neighbors, as well as Henry, angry because he was very distraught about his daughter's death and had been running around trying to get murder warrants drawn up on the neighbor, Anderson. The next arrests were of two bad men from Cheatham County who were arrested and even tried for the murders. Aside from them being known as bad, the evidence against the men was just that one of them was walking on the road to Clarksville nearby the home and wouldn't tell any of the neighbors where he was going prior to the murder. And the other one was a private investigator. In a surprise twist that shocks absolutely no one, both men were acquitted. And that was it. The murder and decapitation of the aides and Rosa and the arson remain unsolved today. The four remaining aide daughters, which each inherited an equal share of the 410 acres, and at the time of the murders, the land was estimated to be, depending on which site you use to calculate for inflation, but then it was worth between $4,000 and $6,000. And today it could be worth $97,000 or $242,000, just like I said, depending on which calculator you use. After the murders, Mr. and Mrs. Whiteman, who had been neighbors of the aides, stepped up to emotionally support the remaining aide children. In December of 1900, though, there was an article published about Rosa and Anna Aide bringing a suit against the Whitemans. This was likely due to Mr. Whiteman beginning to advise Rosa and Anna about what they needed to do with their inheritance. And according to the suit, he told them that the land wasn't worth very much, and he would take their shares in exchange for $100 and 2 small lots in West Nashville. He tried to claim the lots were only worth $1,000 each, but these lots were actually totally worthless. He denied that he had deceived them and later paid them each an additional $250, but he still kept the land. He got 205 acres of land that should have cost him $2,000 for only $600. Mr. Whiteman was never a suspect in the murders, but this seems to be a pretty strong motive and much stronger than any of the other suspects. There is still some farmland remaining out of the old Aide farm, and some of it is a subdivision off Old Clarksville Pike called Jacobs Valley. There is no indication of where the farmhouse or any other buildings on the property once stood. Sheriff Sharp believes that it was murder most foul and will leave not one stone unturned in the capture of the guilty parties. He and Deputy Sheriff Alex Barthel were on the ground yesterday for some time but have little to say on the subject of clues. They found anything incriminating anyone, they withheld it for the investigation. The murders have never been solved, and the heads of the aides were never located, and it's quite obvious the sheriff did not live up to his word and definitely left stones uncovered.
Right.
Anything to add?
I don't think so.
Okay. Moving on right along. Where is William Shakespeare's skull? This one was the kind of chuckly one, but not really because it's still a dead man.
Also, we both established that neither one of us knew that there was anything said that William Shakespeare...
I didn't know that this was a possibility.
Right.
It has long been suspected that grave robbers stole the head of William Shakespeare. However, archaeologists dismissed that as fiction until 2016. William Shakespeare is buried at Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-on-Avon, and the first archaeological investigation was for a documentary. Kevin Coles was the lead archaeologist and made statements that the grave was not as they expected it to be. We came across this very odd, strange thing at the head end. It was very obvious within all the data we were getting that there was something different going on at that particular spot. We have concluded it is signs of disturbance, of material being dug out and put back again. It was also determined that there is a strange brick structure that cuts across the head of the grave. The story of Shakespeare's skull being stolen first appeared in the Argosy magazine in 1879, and this discovery gives this story some credence. Cole said grave robbing was a big thing in the 17th and 18th century. People wanted the skulls of famous people so they could potentially analyze it and see what made them a genius. It is no surprise to me that Shakespeare's remains were a target. Each year, hundreds of visitors stopped by the grave of William Shakespeare, and in 2016, it was the 400th anniversary of his death. Isn't that crazy? 400 years ago, over 400 years ago now.
Right.
And we still talk about him.
Right.
His grave carries no name, only the inscription. Good friend, for Jesus' sake, forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be the man that moves my bones. The archaeological team were able to use ground-penetrating radar to examine the grave and put to rest at least a few of the myths surrounding the burial of William Shakespeare. It has long been suggested that, like his friend, writer Ben Jonson, who is buried at Westminster Abbey, that he was buried standing up.
That creeps me out.
Yeah, that's something about that's weird. Others have claimed that he is buried 17 feet deep in order to not be disturbed, and others say he is buried in a family tomb. But the team concluded that none of these are true. He is instead buried only 3 feet deep and is not in a coffin, but instead is wrapped in a shroud. Another story says that Shakespeare's head was buried 15 miles away in a crypt of St. Leonard's Church in the village of Beoley, Worcestershire.
Worcestershire.
I butchered that last time. I'm glad for the redemption arc. The team scanned the skull and did a thorough forensic anthropological analysis, and the results revealed that the skull was not that of Shakespeare, but instead was that of an unknown woman who was in her 70s, and the team even did a facial reconstruction to help dispel this rumor. The exploratory investigation was not for nothing, as they did learn a lot more about how Shakespeare was buried and the structure that lies underneath his ledger stone. The archaeological team said that they are not convinced that there is enough evidence to conclude that his head is not intact. And Cole said, "We intend to continue to respect the sanctity of his grave in accordance with Shakespeare's wishes and not allow it to be disturbed. We shall have to live with the mystery of not knowing fully what lies beneath the stone." Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea that anybody thought his head was missing.
Right.
How did we even come to this conclusion?
Did
somebody dig him up? And they're probably, nobody listening to this is going to know, because whoever it is probably dead because they were cursed. Just saying.
So, talking about him being buried standing up reminds me, and I don't know if this is fact, but Bjorn Ironside, who was the son of Ragnar Lothbrok, Viking people, and I'm kind of skimming through his, if it says anything about it. But, there's a TV show, so, you don't know how much is fact and how much is fiction for entertainment's sake in the TV shows. But they're in the TV show Vikings, the Amazon TV show Vikings. When he died.
Let me hold your hand.
they buried him sitting upright on his horse. Like his horse and him were upright, standing.
Yeah. I mean, that's not unheard of. Like, there's like a lady who wanted to be buried in her car.
Right. Which I don't see anything about it in this thing, in this article. It just says that there's
really creeps me out, though?
What?
Have you seen have you heard anything about, there's like a specific group of people who will have parties for funerals, but that's not the weird part, because I think that's totally fine.
I mean, yeah, but I feel like my expression to that was because I feel like I know where this is going.
However, the body of the deceased loved one is like mounted, kind of. It's not like, I wouldn't say taxidermied, but it's like sitting in a chair, enjoying the party, in the middle of the party. It's really weird.
That's odd to me.
Like, I'm weird, but I'm not that weird. And
I mean, I think I get the sentiment behind it.
Oh, I do. But I don't know that I'd want to be like having a Jaeger bomb next to my dead cousin. It's not it for me. Or have, and when I say party, it's a big party. They have live entertainment.
I mean, I'm down. When I die, cremate me and don't have a funeral. Have a party.
Yeah.
Throw a party. Everyone get trashed.
You're
and
welcome
then
to bring my urn, too. Do it.
Right.
But, like, please.
And, two, if we're not even close, lie. Tell your boss that we were close. I'll give you that day off. I don't even care.
Unless I didn't like you. Then
take that as a mental health day for you. On me. You're welcome.
I'm going to jump right into my last story. So Missy Bever was a 45-year-old mother of 3 from Red Oak, Texas. Fitness was a major focus in her life, and she taught her own classes. As far as anyone knows, she never had any enemies and was a very active member of her community. On April 18th, 2016, Missy arrived at Midlothian's Creekside Church of Christ around 4 a.m. She was preparing to teach an early morning fitness class and was prepping the room for the intense gladiator boot camp session. By 5 a.m., her students were arriving.
Hold on. Because I interrupted the last time and was like, why are you at a church at 4 a.m.? And then you were like, hold on. And then you told that she was prepping for this class. Why are we having a 5 a.m. class?
I don't know.
Who is getting up to go take a intense gladiator boot camp class?
They were popular
at
classes.
5 a.m.
Yeah.
No. I have not even had a chance to get any drop of caffeine in my system to be a functioning member of society.
And she was there an hour early.
No, thank you. Did she go to bed at like 5 o'clock?
She had
the night before, because I would have had to.
So by 5 a.m., her students were arriving, and they found Missy and called emergency services. Missy had a head injury and multiple puncture wounds to her chest. She was found unresponsive, and she died shortly after the paramedics arrived on the scene. Immediately, the investigation on her murder began. Investigators uncovered surveillance video from the church which showed someone carrying a hammer while opening and closing various rooms around the building, eventually breaking open a door with the hammer. The person was dressed in full head-to-toe police riot gear, including a helmet, gloves, and shin guards, and their vests had police across it. The footage was closely analyzed, however, it was unclear as to the sex of the assailant. It was determined that the murderer was between 5'2" and 5'8". Their feet primarily pointed outward like a penguin, and they had a noticeable limp.
Or like the Loki, like I sent you that picture the other day.
Yeah.
My Loki does that.
Willow's pigeon-toed. Her back legs her feet point inward. Guiding police on the trail of where the murderer had been was a trail of broken glass from windows. It was also found on the church's back door some markings that indicated that this was how the building was penetrated. This led police to initially believe that the incident may have been a robbery gone awry. After searching the property, it was obvious that nothing was missing from the church and nothing was missing from Missy's belongings, and she was still wearing her wedding ring. This area hadn't experienced a homicide in many years, and this concerned the police as they weren't used to dealing with this type of crime. They released the footage of the killer to the public in the hopes that they could find the person. Police told viewers to be acutely aware of the person's specific gait. Within hours, police were flooded with tips from the public, so much so that the FBI and U.S. Marshal's Office stepped in to field some of the phone calls. Missy's phone was subpoenaed and messages were recovered detailing some intimate, flirtatious conversation she was having via LinkedIn. And we had a conversation about LinkedIn because I was like, who's using LinkedIn? And it's for business. But like I said, I guess if you're wanting to do something scandalous and hide it from your partner, they're never going to suspect to check your LinkedIn account.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
I'd be like, you have a LinkedIn account?
Why?
They also found some strange and creepy messages from a man that Missy had shown to a friend a few days prior to her death. Police believe that she may have been in contact with her killer. The names from the LinkedIn conversations were never released. Missy was active on social media and would frequently post about her upcoming boot camps, and on the night before she was killed, she made a post that said that rain or shine, the class was still happening. And unfortunately, this habit made it easy to track her movements. Her husband, Brandon Bevers, was questioned by investigators, but his alibi was easily verifiable. Brandon told investigators that he couldn't think of anyone who wanted to hurt Missy. And it was obvious to investigators that Missy felt she was in a safe place as she left her licensed gun in her car in the church parking lot. According to Brandon, his marriage with Missy was doing great and they were both happy.
Because they always are.
Right, but investigators later found out that the marriage was falling apart due to not only infidelity, but some major financial issues. On April 22nd, Brandon's father, Randy, went to a dry cleaner's in town with a woman's shirt that had some blood stains, requesting that it be cleaned. He told the employee working that it was from breaking up a dog fight. However, Missy's murder had been all over the news and the employee called the police. A warrant was issued for the shirt, and when analyzed, it was concluded that someone had already tried to clean the blood off of the shirt. And police also noted that Randy had a similar physical description to the person in the security footage from the church, and he walked with a noticeable limp. Randy was cleared after his alibi was confirmed. He was in California when Missy was murdered. And Brandon's sister Christy backed up her father's story about the dogfight, and eventually the report came back and the blood was in fact that of a canine. But the damage to Randy's reputation was already done, and the community chastised him, and in their eyes, he was guilty, despite the public statements that he was in fact innocent. Weeks later, police obtained security footage from a nearby sporting goods store and discovered that a Nissan Altima was driving around a nearby parking lot a few hours prior to the murder. This video was also released to the public, however, the owner has never been discovered. And I watched this video, and it's weird. When the car pulled into that parking lot, it cut its lights off. It was raining, and the car drove slowly through the parking lot. At one point, it drove around, turning its lights on and off. It circled the building several times, and then it would go in one direction a couple of times, and then it would go in the other direction once or twice. It was so weird. But then it parked for about 5-ish minutes and with its lights off. But I think when it first parked, it turned them on and off. After this, the car pulled out of the parking lot, turned right, and that was it. There was a second vehicle that the police didn't reach out to the public about, and it was a dark SUV that was seen leaving the church parking lot on the same morning of Missy's murder around 4:30 a.m. Later, in the fall of 2016, police realized that a tip had been called in multiple times during the course of the investigation. This new lead was about former Lancaster police officer Bobby Wayne Henry. He was a tactical officer and admitted to police that he was still in possession of his riot gear. He said that it did not fit him anymore. Henry was a licensed security guard and he worked Missy's funeral. He also attended Mass at Creekside Church of Christ. He had been suspended from the police department due to an aggravated sexual assault in 1996. He owned a vehicle that was similar in description to the second vehicle in connection with the homicide, and he also walked with a limp. Police sought the assistance of a forensic podiatrist, which neither of us knew was a thing,
Right.
to compare Henry's gait to that of the masked assailant in the video, but the findings were inconclusive. The primary issue with Henry being a suspect was that he was 6'1" and was much larger than the person in the security footage. That said, the second search warrant that was issued turned up multiple devices in his possession that contained child pornography.
Of course.
In June 2017, Henry was arrested for the pornography charges and was interviewed from jail by Dallas WFAA News. He denied that he knew Missy, claiming he didn't even know her name. His alibi for the morning of the murder was eventually verified, and he was released after 70 days in jail with no charge. And as of November 2023, he still has not been charged for possession of child pornography.
Of course.
The FBI assisted with the case, and there were some strong suspects, but ultimately the case reached a dead end. This made the residents of Midlothian uneasy as Missy's killer was still free to wander the streets. Internet sleuths combed the internet for clues to try to find Missy's murderer. However, according to the article I used as my source, some of them went a little too far in their search. Hannah, Missy's daughter, spoke to Inside Edition and recalled how much she and her family struggled since her mother's death. She said, "I've had people on Facebook message me and say, 'Your dad did this, your dad killed your mom.' My dad loved my mom, and I know that 100%. Oak Farms Dairy is still offering a reward of $10,000 for information that leads to the capture of Missy's killer. And anyone with information can share tips with police by texting MIDL and a tip to 847-411 or by calling the Ellis County Crime Stoppers at 972-937-7297.
Well. So, as a way to lighten the mood, because those were kind of heavy, instead of doing more unsolved cases, I decided to do unanswerable questions. And since we previously told you that we have already recorded but didn't record this episode, I had to find a new list of questions. So these are questions that neither one of us have seen nor answered, or probably even thought of. So brace yourself, because this could be interesting.
Hope so. Last set was pretty interesting.
This one, so far, from what I've just kind of skimmed through, is make you go, Why hasn't anyone come out with a line of mouse-flavored cat food yet?
Ew.
Cats love it.
I mean, I guess. Ew.
Isn't the word queue like you've got a... like you're waiting in queue for tickets?
Like a line?
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't the word Q just the letter Q followed by 4 silent letters?
4?
Q-U-E-U-E. Is how it's spelled.
I don't know. It can also just be Q-U-E.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is kind of weird, because it's just a letter.
Are eyebrows considered facial hair?
Yes.
Isn't good health just a slower rate at which to die?
Yep. Absolutely. I like thinking about that, though. I'm going to spiral later.
If you told someone to be a leader and not a follower, wouldn't they become a follower by following your advice?
That's a good one.
Oh, here's a good one. If a vampire bites a zombie, does the zombie become a vampire or does the vampire become a zombie?
Oh, I don't like either of those scenarios.
Why doesn't glue stick to the inside of the bottle?
I don't know. It's got to be something to do with the air.
Here's one of these. Who was the first person to figure out how to milk a cow?
Yeah. Who looked at them udders and was like, you know what? I bet I could squeeze on them.
I'm going to squeeze those titties and then drink what comes out of it.
Ew.
I
bet they had diarrhea.
If you choke a Smurf, what color does it turn?
I don't know. Probably purple.
Should vegetarians eat animal crackers?
Sorry, I just bumped my mic. I like that one.
What hair color do they put on a bald person's driver's license?
I think they put bald.
Do they?
I think.
This is kind of, I did ask a question similar to this on the last one. Who tests and confirms whether dog food is ever improved?
Yeah, you did this one the last time. I said, I don't know, but it don't smell like it's been improved.
How do you handcuff a one-armed man?
I think they'll handcuff them to another officer.
Oh.
I think that's what they do.
Why is it called rush hour when it's actually the slowest time of day? Listen, I just recently...
It's probably because there's a rush of people.
Right. I just recently had to... So I've been working at home. I've been working from home for about 4 years now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So prior to that, I never worked any further than like 20 to 30 minutes from home. And I had it down to a science as to what time I had to leave to avoid any type of traffic, so I didn't have to sit in traffic for very long.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, like the job that I would have, I was going
You're
like
welcome.
in the opposite direction of which way traffic would generally be backed up.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that big of an issue. But like I had to go to a doctor's appointment on Monday. And my appointment was at 2:30. In Brentwood.
I was going to say, ooh. Did you take 65?
I went, yes. So I went 440 to 65.
Getting back.
My anxiety was so bad. I was like, this is why I'm a passenger princess. This is why I never drive when we go to, this is why I always have somebody else take me. This is like, I cannot, I don't know how people do this on a daily, but then the coming back home at 3:30.
Yeah.
Or it might have even been later than 3:30.
Awful.
Getting back to
that starts at about 2:30.
From 440 to 40.
Yeah.
Like going back home.
Mm-hmm.
So getting off of 40 or getting off 440 to get onto 40 was stupid.
Yeah.
So
also,
stupid. I was ready
65 to 440, like trying to get in to get off at 440.
Oh, I just stayed over in that lane, in that far lane. I was like, I'm not getting over. I'm just going to stay over on the right.
So bad.
It was awful.
I hate because I would have to drive the other lady I work for out to Brentwood because that's where her office is. And I was like, can we please try to leave early? And she's like, well, I have a patient at 4:00. So we wouldn't leave till 5, and it's worse then.
Right.
So it took us all of an hour and a half to get all the way back here.
Never mind. Why is a boxing ring square? Why do we wait until night to call it a day?
I don't know. I hate this. I hated this last time. I don't like it any better this time.
Where does a thought go when it's forgotten?
into the simulation database.
Which came first, the fruit or the color orange?
Oh, probably the fruit.
If you try to fail and succeed, then which have you done? I said that on the last one, but I worded it differently.
And I likened it to a Taylor Swift lyric.
Here's one. If Cinderella's shoe fit her perfectly, then why did it fall off?
Because it was glass, probably.
Well, and she's probably sweaty.
Yeah. She been dancing all night.
I
bet that little shoe was stinky.
Why is pizza... Well, I mean, I guess this would only be relevant if it were this type. But why is pizza called a pizza and not a veggie bread? I mean, if you got meat on it, but you know.
Yeah, because I had pepperoni and onions on my pizza last night.
I had a barbecue chicken pizza last night. That's like my favorite pizza.
I don't know what it is. I don't want chicken on my pizza.
I'm like, if I'm going to order a pizza, it's going to be a barbecue chicken pizza. Ooh. I love it.
I'm sure it's good, but I'm just not into it. I'm weird about chicken, though. I'm afraid it's poison.
I see what you're saying, though. When does it stop being partly sunny and become partly cloudy?
When the clouds come out.
But it's partly sunny. So clouds would be relevant there, too. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Was math invented or was it discovered?
Probably. It had to have been invented. Somebody had to think of this shit.
Here's a question that I have often wondered. Yes. Do animals experience consciousness like we do?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah. If you look in their eyes sometimes, I mean, like, okay, so like Amara, absolutely. Little cat, no thoughts.
Amara's peoply, though. I don't think she's fully cat.
Probably not. But I mean, even Willow, like, you can just see the gears turning sometimes because she's
in nefarious reasons.
Right. She's like fresh and new. She's only a year old. But like little cat only wants to wear my skin. And I'm not, you can't convince me otherwise.
Right.
Because that cat will be trying to get in my mouth, in my face. And I'm like, if something happens to me, that cat's going to eat a hole in me and just lay inside.
Just crawl inside?
Yeah. But like, other than that, no thoughts. There is not a thought behind those eyes.
Why do black olives come in cans and green olives come in jars? I've never thought about that. That's never been a thought. Can you get black olives in jars?
I have no idea, but it's got to be like a pickling thing because the jars, that's pickled. Like,
yeah,
they're pickled.
Yeah,
probably.
That makes sense.
And in the cans, those aren't pickled. That's probably why they have that like vinegary taste. I don't like green olives.
I do. I'd rather green olives than black olives.
I like black olives because they taste like nothing. And they're a fun little texture with their little holes in them.
Are prison buses equipped with emergency exits?
Probably. They probably legally have to be, but they probably are like heavily locked. I don't know what they do.
Why do we keep our garments in a suitcase and our suits in a garment bag?
I have no idea.
Why is the third hand on a watch called the second hand? I mean, I know why, but...
yeah, I know why, but like...
Play on words.
Yeah.
Is French kissing called French kissing in France?
They probably just call it kissing. You're just making out. Just a little...
How much control do you have over what happens in your life?
Not much.
Karma is often called a human construct, but so is it real or not?
I say it's real.
I don't think it's a human construct.
No. I think we've given it a name.
Right.
But I think that bad things always come back to bad people.
Right. Okay, so how much do you want me to send you to Spiral?
I don't know. I'm tired.
Are you ready?
Not be that bad.
Why are you here doing what you're doing at this very moment in your life?
Because I have a consciousness of some sort. But what really gets me is to think about how small we are.
Right.
Like, to us in this room, we're big. To Amara, we're huge. To the ladybug that Willow was towering over in the kitchen a couple days ago, she's massive.
Right.
And I'm even bigger. But, like, if you think about the universe as a whole, it's infinite. And we're just tiny little specks. When I take a gummy, that's what I think about. I just lay there in silence, staring at the ceiling, maybe even eating a little snack, thinking about how big the universe is and how small I am in it. But here I am, focused on how large I am. Isn't that weird?
Hold on. And TJ just texted me.
Amara, you so cute.
Do different languages affect human thinking differently? And if so, by how much? So, like, do people who speak Spanish, do they think different than we do?
Well, they would think in Spanish.
Well, yeah.
And because their sentence structure isn't the same, I would assume that it would be a little bit different from language to language. Because, like, so just for example, there's a guy who, Cole the Corn Star. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got a farm. He's currently renovating his farmhouse. It's like over 100 years old or whatever. And he's got a guy from Ukraine he's got good English also. Listen to what he does. He's a professional arm wrestler.
Okay.
And it's intense. But anyway. So this guy, he's from Ukraine. English is not his first language. But, like, whenever there's, like, certain things, like, certain statements he'll make, it's, like, the words are out of order. And then, like, Cole will say something, and he's like, I assume I've said that wrong. Because he's kind of making fun of me for it.
Right.
Or he'll say, like, we don't have a word for that. That doesn't exist in our language.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Or I like the ones that are like, or like if somebody's like, oh, well, how do you say, like, for example, like, how do you say butter in your language? And they're like, we just say butter. I see your little nipples.
What a weird thing to say.
Well, Amara, I don't know. She's been stress pulling her hair out. And now you can, like, really see her little nipples.
Who created the alphabet and why does it exist in that particular order?
I think we know this. I think we know who created at least the English alphabet. But I don't know why he did it in the order he did. Of course, it was a man.
If you punch yourself and it hurts, are you weak or are you strong?
Well, our brains are wired to not be
I don't
able
like
to...
how these are supposed to be unanswerable questions and you have ethical, like, logical answers for these.
Well, our brains are wired to not be able to, like, really injure ourselves because, like, we're strong enough that we could just rip ourselves apart, but there's something in our brains that prevents us from doing so. Isn't that crazy? I'm a wealth of knowledge over here.
If a person tells you that they're a pathological liar, do you believe them?
No.
Unless
they're incredibly self-aware, but most pathological
then,
liars are not. They're in denial.
Right. Okay, so nonprofit for the week is called...
We are still recording, by the way.
Thank God. Nonprofit for the week is called Solve the Case. It is a nonprofit that is dedicated to finding missing persons, solving cases of murder, and other serial offenses. They use the power of the internet to bring the community together to look at cases in new and innovative ways with investigative professionals. So as a nonprofit, they thrive off the contributions of the community. Contributions, no matter how big or small, make a difference toward the families finding answers. So you can donate. You can go through, and there is a section there where you can look at all the cases that they're looking into. And then the Missy Bever's case is one of them. We discovered there are quite a few. They are from all over. I even saw one in Canada. So it's, it's pretty widespread. But yeah, I thought it was pretty cool, pretty relevant to this episode. I try to tie in based off of what we're doing for that episode, but
yeah.
So thanks for coming to another week. We appreciate you. We know that some of these episodes are a little harder to listen to than others.
Ooh.
Oh.
I'm on Facebook. So, have you heard the Vince McMahon allegations?
No. I did, however, while you were reading yours, since I had already heard it, I was half-assed listening, but I was scrolling through Facebook, and I saw pictures of Jennifer Aniston, and the girl still got it.
Oh, yeah.
She was in a bikini and looking hot.
But, so, I guess, I haven't really, looked into it, but he's been accused of some awful things. And apparently he likes poop play. He's into poop.
That's nasty.
Yeah. Well, it has now...
I'm not here to kink shame. Sorry.
No. But it has now been announced that his daughter has been named in cover-up allegations. And also...
Stephanie?
Yes. And also, it says, ex-WWE divas are saying that Stephanie McMahon not only knew what her father was doing, but she helped him get away with it for years.
I'm not surprised. Not even a little bit. What you got to say about that, Triple H? What you got to say about that, being married to that?
Ew. Nothing. One of our local artists who does music is going to play at Municipal, which is unfortunate because I think he's in the midst of a mental breakdown. But
is it the...
That's none of my business.
Is it the one that's like local?
Yeah, local.
The one that I'm not a fan of?
Yeah. Hey, I'm not either, after some of the stuff he said. So.
You used to be.
Oh, yeah. I don't mind his music. But, as far as, his personality, it's a bit grating.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We were so...
And I think he speaks before he thinks.
Oh, absolutely. So my son, all of a sudden, well, I say all of a sudden, it's been like a slow progression, is obsessed with cars, specifically sports cars. Mm-hmm. All you ever hear him talk about is Lamborghinis.
Whenever we stopped by that day to bring that shirt, did you hear him and Daniel in the hallway talking about cars? No, he's showing him all his little cars.
Yeah, he'll talk to you about cars all day long. He loves it. It's a whole thing. Now, within the past couple weeks, his big thing, him and TJ will sit and watch Top Gear.
Nice.
With the three old men, the English ones,
the British one.
Yeah. They'll sit and watch that. He loves it. Absolutely loves it. And he can name all the sports cars, all of them. Ones that I've never even heard of. And he tells you all about them.
Yeah.
And blows me away with the endless knowledge that he has about these cars. And so we were discussing the other day, which his birthday is in July. So we've got a while, whereas, I've got 3 weeks till Maddie's. But something was said about Easton's birthday the other day. And TJ was like, I want to rent a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or something. $2,000.
Yeah.
As just a deposit, a security deposit or whatever. I think you get it back afterwards, but I'm not spending that much on a car for us to rent it for a day.
No.
One day for his birthday. I'm all for renting something like that. He'd be happy with a Dodge Charger.
Try to find somebody local that has a sports car.
See, that's where I'm going with this. So
there's a dude up the road that has 2 Lamborghinis.
Easton would shit. But anyway, look at her.
I know. That is the most comfortable she's ever been.
I'm taking a picture of this right now real fast. But anyway, we were discussing this.
Cover up my fat roll.
Oh, you made her move. Now she's not as cute as she was. There we go. Maybe not.
Look that way.
Amara.
Or something.
Amara. Hey. Hey. No, she's not having it. Anyway.
She'll
So
do it as soon as you're.
we were, having this discussion, and I'm like, he'd be happy with the Dodge Charger. Like, anything that looks like a sports car and sounds like a sports car, he's good.
Yeah.
But like, when we pulled up to trivia the other night, there was a purple Lamborghini, I believe, sitting in the parking lot. It was gorgeous. So of course we're gonna.
Sure, that's the guy that lives up the road.
I don't know, but he's
got two. He's got a silver one, and I don't know what color the other one is.
Well, we were talking about it, and I'm like, if we just knew somebody, and I'm like, I'd be okay with you making friends with that certain artist, long enough to see if we could borrow his.
Does he still have his?
I don't know. We used to see him down the road at that grocery store down the road, all the time in that thing.
Yeah,
but I haven't in a while. But also, I don't go anywhere. But but I'm like, I'd be cool with you making friends with him just to do that. And he was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
It ain't worth it.
No. But, all right, guys. Well, thanks for coming to another week. We appreciate you. Oh, were you going to say something?
Well, we gotta, what is it, cast our circle of what?
Make sure you're casting your social media circle.
Social circle.
Follow us on the Facebook.
Instagram.
TikTok.
X.
Send us an email at wandersofweird@gmail.com. Oh, yeah. Okay, bye.
I hope I can still get that out the next episode.